Welcome to GovEcon Tonight with your boy Deep Roy. Today we're going to be discussing funding towards the sciences, which is literally the second broadest phrase in existence next to build a wall. In all seriousness though, funding towards the sciences is one of the biggest problems this nation is facing in 2017, but sadly it's been flying under the radar. In today's segment, we're going to be discussing and interviewing some of the biggest faces in government, from former Department of Education Secretary Arne Duncan, former NASA Chief Frank Bolden Jr., former National Science Foundation Director Arnie Bevent, and finally, former President Barack Obama. First, let's welcome former Secretary Arne Duncan.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I'm just going to be very blunt right now. This nation is in a crisis right now, and every other country is probably laughing at us because of the repeated mistakes the Trump administration has made. I mean, we have an education secretary who literally has zero experience in education. But the most important part is that the budget cuts within the Trump budget could see STEM education diminish in the next few years.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on. In my term as Education Secretary, funding for the sciences was a major priority. Under the Obama administration, we expanded the national endowment for the arts and sciences and really honed in on STEM education. However, in the last few months and years, we had to see the importance of STEM education fall away. President Trump's new spending plan eliminates $1.6 billion in STEM funding allocated to the Every Student Succeeds Act. I mean, I was watching the news, and it was so horrible. They're no longer discussing important stuff like science, innovation, technology. They're more like talking about like presidential typos and tweets. Like, what are you doing? Like, what is a COVEFE? This is what breaking news is now. We need to raise awareness for STEM research.
Now, for those of you who have been living under a rock, or for you, Ms. DeVos, if you're watching, STEM stands for Science, Technology, Education, and Mathematics. Anyways, moving on. I was looking at Trump's recent budget proposal, and it cuts funding towards the Endowment of Arts and STEM education, which includes the NASA Education Office, which works directly in conjunction with the Department of Education, to spread interest in sciences in K-12 schools across this nation. But here's the thing, the budget that Trump is proposing, it cuts funding towards those departments. How do you suggest we prevent these severe cuts?
Well, the Department of Education, NASA, and a multitude of other agencies help students in low-income areas to explore the STEM education. In 2018, we will need 8.65 million STEM workers. Without the STEM program, students will lose interest in sciences, and while the demand for these workers will increase, the supply will definitely decrease. So in 2012, 49% of all first-year degrees in China, they were of the STEM variety, like engineering stuff. But in the U.S., we only have 33% of that stuff. So if we don't promote STEM programs, we will fall behind. It really boils down to one thing: accountability. We need to hold our politicians, cabinet members, and President Trump accountable for their actions. We need to rally, write letters, send emails to our congressmen and congresswomen to make sure that they understand the importance of STEM education and sciences in schools. The first step towards a good STEM program is trained STEM teachers. So I propose we fund new initiatives, spending around, $100 million to train more teachers to teach STEM. This amount of money is nothing compared to the benefits in long-term growth.
I couldn't have said it better myself, and unfortunately neither could Sean Spicer. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Duncan, and I hope to see you here on better conditions.
Thanks for having me.
Next on, we have our NASA Chief, Frank Bolden. Thanks for coming on, Frank.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Frank, you were the NASA Chief during the Obama administration, what now seems to be the golden age of the United States history. Can you please tell us, our viewers, and President Trump, if he's watching, the various NASA initiatives you worked on and how valuable they are to this nation?
So I realize that not a lot of Americans wake up bright and early and thank the government for 5 minutes for NASA, but I can tell you that NASA is a critical agency responsible for making strides in various areas of science, whether it be environmental science, physics, biochemistry, or astronomy. Thinking about our great achievements in space, in science, like the Hubble Space Telescope and the International Space Station. The Hubble sent back thousands and thousands of images that helped us learn about the universe, evolution of planets, and dark energy, and so much more.
So NASA doesn't just work with space and aliens?
No, not at all. That's a common misconception. We work alongside various other agencies to research climate change, explore harsh conditions in various locations, whether it be freezing Antarctica or the harsh climates in Death Valley, and we study a myriad of ecosystems as well. I know I used a lot of big words here, but it essentially means that NASA is a critical part of scientific advances.
As I said before in the show, I read through the budget, all 972 pages of it, and there aren't really any changes to the funding of NASA directly. However, some key programs are being eliminated, such as the asteroid mission, the climate change research program, and several education programs that NASA has created. Are any of these programs significant to NASA going forward?
Yes, I worked recently with NASA officials on a lot of these new projects. There are some highly qualified, hardworking individuals, and if Trump's budget proposal goes through, then this nation is going to stagnate. We are no longer going to be making technological advances, and we're going to fall behind other countries. So if I were President Trump, which I hope I will never be, I would work closely with NASA officials to analyze which programs are unnecessary and can be eliminated without any major repercussions.
I mean, I was looking through some of the things that our government spends tax dollars on, and there are some ridiculous things. I mean, our government spends $1 million on putting pottery in zoos across this nation, which is completely unnecessary. Like, why are these items still included in the budget when we could be allocating them to departments like NASA or the Department of Education? Additionally, Trump proposed an increase in $24 billion to the military when we could be allocating it towards the sciences. Anyways, thank you for coming on our show, Frank, and hope you have a good day.
Thank you, Deet.
All right. Speaking of the NSF, let's welcome the NSF director, Frank, or Arden Bement. Yep. What's up, Frank? Hey, Arden. Okay.
It's really an honor to be on the show, dude.
Okay, I'm getting breaking news right now. President Trump just posted a tweet. Who is this guy, Deet Roy? His show is awful. This is fake news, and whatever he's saying is fake and fabricated. The budget I created was a winning budget. Well, first of all, I'm glad that Mr. Trump mentioned me on his tweets. It's a real honor, probably the biggest honor I've received in my career. But what are your thoughts on this winning budget?
So if Trump really preached winning, the National Science Foundation wouldn't be losing over $500 million on expanding research towards STEM-related fields. In my time as the NSF director, we researched and developed strategies to combat water contamination in places like Flint, Michigan. We expanded K-12 STEM education in places where poverty is crippling progress. And we issue out grants to individual researchers. And of course, we help companies make progress in science and technology. Google, for example, really took off after the NSF granted them money.
Wow, that's incredible. If Google didn't exist, Trump wouldn't be able to search how big his wall should be, whether something is fake news or not, or even post tweets as efficiently as he does. How severe will the cuts in the Trump budget proposals really be?
Well, the NSF doesn't quite get cut as severely as other organizations. We only lose $776 million, but it's still a significant amount. Without this money, our abilities will be quite hampered. Giving grants to budding researchers or scientists will most likely be severely scaled back, if not completely eliminated. And this cut will produce a serious technological shortage in our declining nation. And if you ever took AP macroeconomics, you know that this will cause a leftward shift in the PPC and thus less long-term growth.
I mean, I don't see any more tweets. I guess that means President Trump already zoned out from this show making way too much sense. Anyways, what do you think we should do about this? How can we convince Trump to keep funding the sciences in the future?
Yeah, so I think obviously the most important thing to note is that Trump doesn't have the final say in spending. Congress does. Therefore, we should pursue grassroots lobbying and get our opinion across to Congress. By lobbying Congress, we will encourage them to not support Trump's proposed budget, but rather one that benefits the country and the desires of the people. This seems ineffective, but look at the NRA. They have a large budget to hire lobbyists to talk to congressmen, and if the congressmen don't follow their advice, the members of the NRA are just going to vote them out of Congress, and we all know that's what our congressmen care about. However, it's not going to be an easy task. The problem with the grassroots lobbying is motivating people, and the problem with direct lobbying is getting enough money. So these are very hard obstacles to overcome.
Right, I totally agree. So if lobbying has so many problems, then why should we even do it? What other solutions do we have?
Well, I still think that lobbying is the best solution because despite its downsides, it's really effective. Perhaps a celebrity or important political figure can really help us out with this cause.
It's a good thing we have a very influential and important person with us tonight. Former President Barack Obama.
cup of tea.
Thanks for being here,
Oh,
bro.
man.
How's it going?
It's pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for having me. As you can see, I was just on vacation, but it's good to be back.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Mr. President. At least one of our presidents actually believes in the sciences. If you were able to give President Trump one piece of advice with regards to STEM education or anything with regards to funding towards sciences, what would it be?
Oh boy. First of all, Donald, get your head out of social media and get to work on those appointments. I mean, 85% of top science jobs in the government don't even have a nominee. This means lower level bureaucrats are running various agencies and departments. My main priority at the start of my first term was appointing highly skilled officials to the NSF, EPA, FDA, and the Department of Education. With President Trump, it seems as though every person has opposite goals as their respective agencies. Once we appoint heads to these agencies, then we can start talking about establishing goals, whether it's going to Mars or increasing STEM education.
Okay, so I just want to clarify something. In the second term of your presidency, you did have to cut funding towards the sciences because you needed to pass a budget that would receive bipartisan support. Can you please further expand upon your different attempts to hone in on the sciences and some of the challenges you faced?
I'm not going to deny that I didn't pass the best budget for sciences, but I never sought to defund multiple important organizations. Because of my campaign, Educate to Innovate, we raised $1 billion towards STEM education. I stand with Mr. Bement that lobbying Congress is a great idea. People don't need support of a great individual like me, but it certainly does help. What we see with the March for Sciences with Bill Nye the Science Guy, he's a very important person that people stood behind. If we get many people to support our cause, then Congress has to listen to our voices and cannot ignore us. Do you remember how the March on Washington helped the Civil Rights Movement? This is what the country needs. People who are dedicated and willing to help our cause.
I completely agree with you, President Obama, but that's all the time we have for this segment, so thank you for being on. Thank you for all our guests who were here today and enlightened us about Trump's recent budget proposal. They provided some great arguments on how science has a huge impact on the long-term prosperity of this nation. A lack of focus towards STEM education will put us technologically behind several other countries. Additionally, they provided information with regards to NASA and the National Science Foundation that we should start focusing more on these specific agencies. So we did receive a lot of good information here today. But lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Google, Facebook, and several other agencies like NASA and the National Science Foundation. But more importantly, let's start donating to the Covfefe Foundation, which is dedicated to educating students in Africa gain access to STEM-related fields. Thank you for tuning in with us today. Join us next week.